Hey, this is Chris with Primed Palette. Today we're going to be talking about solving creative blocks, or another way of thinking of it, gaining production flow through whatever sort of creative thing you're looking to do. Aside from raw discipline on creating something new, additional influences exist that will determine your frequency and quality of producing. Variables that, if solved, will get your creative flow back on track and boost your mood sustainably. Solving these creative blocks requires intense self-honesty. Are you willing to be fully accountable to get your creative flow moving? If so, let's go. All right, so in the past, we invested as humans most of our time sourcing and maintaining food and energy. Now, for many parts of the world, we have such a large abundance of food and energy that our challenge has shifted from sourcing that food and energy to being responsible with how we consume it, to be responsible specifically with how we select to consume. We read nutrition labels, we try new diets, we monitor our calorie intake, we read articles on which foods to avoid and which to eat more of so we can perform our best. On the content side of the world, in terms of creative content, got some interesting stats here around YouTube. So every day, YouTube receives an additional 720,000 hours of new content. That's 4 weeks of staying in bed with no sleep to keep up and have a full track record of yesterday's new videos. And if you're going to be healthy about it and get good rest and eat and take breaks, it's going to take about 8 weeks to keep track of yesterday's video content. By the time you finish watching all of yesterday's video content, you'll have another 240 weeks of content to catch up on at the end of your 8-week binge. It's virtually impossible to ever watch all the content on YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, Disney+, HBO Max, and many of the other niche streaming services that add to this mix of abundant content. A major source of your creative block is tied to this abundance of content. How and what you engage with will determine how well you produce your own content. We must be mindful of what content we watch, believe, and immerse ourselves in. There's an important connection worth investigating between being a consumer of content, curator of concepts, and a creator of new content. So those three elements, right? Being a consumer, a curator, somebody who collects and organizes, and then a creator are huge in understanding how to solve creative block. So to create near or at our full potential, we must be aware there are 5 factors to creative blocks. And this is detailed by Annie Mueller on her website. There's a link in the comments down below that I'd love for you to go check out her work. She's got incredible writings that she does. She's a freelance writer, but she does a lot of writing on the actual process of creating content. So these 5 variables, these 5 elements are what are preventing you from creating more fluidly with flow. Trash inputs, not enough inputs, misplaced energy, creative constipation, and perfectionism. So the first creative block that I spoke about, trash inputs. How do the quick fix content sources that we take in affect our creative waistline? The snack food of content, easily accessible, plays to our current beliefs or what we want to believe, is trash input. You know you've been chomping away at too many trash inputs when you feel uninspired, bored, depressed, or upset. You struggle with developing ideas you like, or your ideas fizz out before you reach the finishing touches. Your work feels unsatisfying even if you give it your all. You're abandoning your projects or skipping quality control, and you may feel like you're losing your touch. You feel disconnected from your audience and the people you want to connect with. So how do we read the content nutrition labels of the inputs that we bring into our lives to make sure that we're not taking in too many trash inputs? It's not necessarily a bad thing to take in a trash input. Everybody does at times. I've got my guilty pleasures on videos that I like to watch that are definitely more on the drama side, or maybe it's more about pop culture. That's okay. That's all right. But ask yourself, what am I consuming? Am I reviewing both sides to an argument to find out more? Am I trusting one of these content sources without questioning it? You're the only person capable of filtering your trash inputs. You have to take responsibility to make an adjustment to your sources on a routine basis to develop more balance and more inspiration. So take a break from social media and news sites and get back to the basics. Go read some fiction, go to the museum, listen to some classical music, get back to the roots of creativity and approach your process with the simplest materials. A pencil sketch, a single color painting, one melody without chord progression. Give yourself space to grow back from the fundamentals, and soon you'll have detoxed enough to move to the more advanced processes of creating. So the second creative block is not enough input. So what happens when you aren't getting a large enough variety of the good stuff? You know you're not getting enough of the right stuff when you feel stretched thin, empty, restless, uninterested, jealous, and resentful. All of this slowly turns into self-pity, which is a creativity killer. You start identifying with a poor you mentality, which further isolates you, and the perception shifts to fate. You were fated to be this way. So how do you get a more balanced content diet to overcome some of these overwhelmingly negative emotions? Our lives get busy, and sometimes we feel the need to block out any inputs and only focus on output. Or maybe we've only been getting our inputs from one single source. Quantity and variety are key here to rebalance your perception of self-control. So while you rest and brainstorm on what you need to add to your life, answer this question with honesty. Knowing the truth may sound scary. What are you craving? It's going to require change. Start as small as possible, identify the absolute smallest next step, and begin your journey there. Ask the people around you for recommendations on books, shows, or any other experience, and take on the recommendation fully. Dive into something completely new with an open mind. And before you know it, you're going to have more and more of a varied and better quality range of inputs that'll help inspire you as a creative producer. Block number 3, misplaced energy. How can you misplace your creative energy? Well, you've identified many sources of high quality inputs. You share it every day with everyone you know. You've organized all your input sources, labeled them, scheduled them for sharing, but too much of your energy is going into the curation of inputs. You may still be creating, but your larger focus is to catalog content that you love. You love the positive feedback loop of sharing others' work, but turning to producing your own feels sluggish, too difficult, too lonely. Your want to share others' work is founded in the fear that you'll never personally live up to the standards of the work that you've been sharing. Jealousy blends into these emotions, but you repress and reject you feel this way by finding your emotional high in somebody else's work and sharing somebody else's work. You know you're unhappy, but you aren't being honest enough with yourself about why. So what can you do to rebalance your creative output if you're misplacing energy? So to solve the misplaced energy, you must start on being honest with yourself on a deeper level. Commit to a small production cycle, 20 to 30 minutes of producing. Know that you've gotten out of practice. Your potential and capability is still with you. Find sublime happiness in the fact that you'll never run out of content to consume and curate, so you may as well stop trying to stay ahead of the curve, documenting each new piece of content, and more time producing your own. Create even if you perceive the product that you're going to be creating less than the people that you follow and share, because you will improve with each session of production. Block number 4, creative constipation. What does creative constipation feel like? It's a funny word. What does it actually feel like? You've stepped completely away from creating, and you're not alone. Most people find themselves in this phase of creative block. We're all creative in our human nature, so while it might be common to not actively be creating, it certainly isn't normal. Or maybe you're creating, but not in the traditional sense. No matter how much input you're taking in, you find yourself isolated from your own creative ability. Annie points out in her article that this is all founded in an identity problem. You don't see yourself as an artist, no matter how flexible the term can be. You don't need to be called or think of yourself as an artist to create. In fact, it's healthier to consider yourself as an individual with an unlimited ability to learn. I could move on a tangent here to talk about the importance of dropping labels and identities, but that's a great subject for another video. Know this: identities do more to restrict your potential and wall off potential connections than helping you find meaning in life. If you're going through creative constipation, additional symptoms include a short attention span and difficulty focusing. You're constantly on the hunt for something new and quickly distance yourself to start looking for yet another new interest once you've found something. You are operating on a deficit of fulfillment. If we're doing creative work, that fulfillment is engaged and deeply entrenched in part of your process, you're going to be sustainably satisfied. So how do you overcome creative constipation? Vulnerability will allow you to move past this block. Like overcoming trash inputs, not enough right inputs, or misplaced energy, it's time to be honest with yourself again. Come to terms with you being the only one holding you back from creating, the only one limiting yourself to an identity that doesn't jive with being a creator. Drop the identity scheme and start seeing yourself for the unlimited potential you have. Try something new. Investigate other creatives and learn about the struggles they went through to create. Find evidence that proves you're not alone and that others were able to overcome this block. Start on the path of what you enjoy consuming. Is it beauty how-tos? Maybe it's jewelry. Maybe it's sports commentary. Start making your own content around these topics that you love taking in. Do it to learn something new for the process of creating. Don't do it for the likes, don't do it for the shares or the subscribes. Those naturally come along the road of creating and sharing your content. The last and final block, perfectionism. How does setting high standards constrain you from creating? In this block, you've probably created plenty, but you're keeping it locked up behind closed doors and folders, never intending to post and share out, all because you don't think it's good enough. Fear is controlling your progression. You've let fear take the wheel. And while fear will be with you on every metaphorical road trip you take, it should never be allowed to drive. You've become so focused on the quality of your work that it's become an identity-based filter. You want to be perceived as a great producer, since your perception is focused entirely on the producers that you think are great. You want to be at their level and know that you aren't quite there yet. So your work withers away behind closed shutters with no sunlight, slowing your progress as a producer. You may feel angry, ready to explode. The things you used to love start to be seen through a filter of gray. You become increasingly jealous, sensitive, and start blaming everything around you and start making logical connections to support your negative emotions. But you know what's really going on. You're the only one responsible for this block, this negative cycle, and you trapped yourself in this prison of your own making. And fear, behind the steering wheel of your life, gladly drove you and dropped you off and signed the papers to lock you up. But you keep forgetting you have the key to get back home in your pocket. So how do you overcome this filter of perfectionism? How do you find that key and unlock yourself? The solution for this messy problem is simple. You have to realize you've given control of your life to fear. While simple, this is a huge epiphany to have. One that may even make you laugh once you realize it. Pick something from your personal collection of work and send it out. Get it online. Let it outdoors. You can call it a work in progress, incomplete, or not finished, but let it get some sun. Clearly outline what needs to be done to complete your work. What are you working on next? Offer your viewers the opportunity to provide their feedback. Own that you are learning, growing, working on improving. Ask yourself, what's the worst possible consequence you may face by sharing your work? Can you handle it? Absolutely. Your long-term solution requires you to seek out more time spent on relationships and activities away from your creative work to help relax your mind's identification with being a world-class creative. After all, there's certainly more to life than producing and being showered with praise for what you've done. Turn the table. Be the shower of praise for your fellow producer. Know that you're on the road to being a world-class creative, but take comfort in knowing you may never reach that destination. The events that happen along that road are much more satisfying than claiming a diamond-studded identity. So we've reviewed the 5 creative blocks from Annie: trash inputs, not enough inputs, misplaced energy, creative constipation, and perfectionism. Being aware of these 5 creative blocks and their corresponding solutions will bring you back to flow. And flow, smooth, ebbing, transitional movement is what makes us feel so damn good. I hope you enjoyed this video. I feel deeply passionate about the importance of producing, and I'm crossing my fingers it helps you prime your palette and get you back to the most important human function, creating. Leave a comment on which creative block you'll be working on. I want to hear where you're at and what you're doing to overcome that specific block. See you next time.